Welcome back, Endgame community. If you don't know or if you're new here, my name is Chris. I'm one half of the Fantasy Football Endgame with Pierre. And today, I'm going to talk about some players that through 3 weeks of the fantasy football season, you probably are panicking on, and I'm going to let you know whether you should or should not be panicking on these players. Now, before we get to that really quick, lots of stuff for you down below. We got links to our free Discord server. You absolutely want to get in there. Great discussion all week long to help you with your decisions, with your matchups, trades, waiver wire, whatever you want. Also, we have a goal. Pierre and I have a goal to build the best, the most inclusive, the most welcoming, the most fun, the most positive, the most awesome fantasy football community in the world, and we need your help. Down below, a link to our Patreon. Become a patron for a very, very, very small price. Not only will you help support this movement to create the greatest fantasy football community in the world, but you'll also get tons of cool stuff. More info in the description. Check it out. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into this week's Panic Players. And let's start, as I always do, with the Thursday night game and a player, a wide receiver for the Panthers, Robby Anderson. This is a guy who got paid in the offseason, but he hasn't been paying off for your fantasy team, right? Week 1, caught one catch for 57 yards and a touchdown. You felt okay. Week 2, didn't do a whole lot. Week 3, did even less. And there's a big problem for Robby Anderson, and that's his role in this Panthers offense. If you look at last year, when you look at Robby Anderson and DJ Moore, Robby Anderson ran more of the shorter intermediate routes, and DJ Moore ran more of the longer routes. Hence why Robby Anderson was so good last year, and a lot of times was actually better than DJ Moore, at least from a fantasy perspective. Well, that has completely flip-flopped this year. And this is a big problem for Robby Anderson because his quarterback is Sam Darnold, who looks completely afraid to take any kind of deep shots. If you were watching that game on Thursday night, the Texans were playing a ton of two deep zone with the safeties way to the outside. The middle of the field was wide open. And I saw at least a handful of times a player, and sometimes Robby Anderson, running wide open down the seam, down the middle, and Sam Darnold would not pull the trigger. This guy, look, he's been better than I expected this year. I freely admit that, but he still sees ghosts. He doesn't want to pull the trigger, and that's going to be a problem for a guy like Robby Anderson who's running the deeper routes. Now, there is a slight, and I say slight, light at the end of the tunnel here because they get Dallas in week 4. Dallas has a great corner in Tavon Diggs. He's been playing incredible this year. Very likely he will shadow DJ Moore. That means Robby Anderson, by default, might just need more targets and more catches. So what you got to hope, if you have Robby Anderson, you got to hope that he goes off in week 4 because Tavon Diggs does a great job against DJ Moore. And then you can trade him to somebody who still thinks Robby Anderson can be what he was last year and doesn't realize that his role has completely changed. But outside of that, 100% panicking on Robby Anderson. In fact, I would go so far as to say if you're in a shallower 10-team type league and there's somebody really good on the waiver wire that you could pick up, I would totally be okay with dropping Robby Anderson. All right, let's stick with wide receivers, and this one is very painful for me, and it's Allen Robinson. And we've talked about this guy being quarterback proof, but I don't know if he's Justin Fields proof. What a terrible first start for Justin Fields. 6 completions on 20 attempts, 63 total yards. That's just not going to get, no wide receiver, however good they are, can be fantasy relevant with those kind of numbers. Now, on the plus side, he did lead the team with a whopping 6 targets. But for as long as Justin Fields is the starter, we have to be terrified. I can't believe I'm saying it right now, but I actually miss Andy Dalton. At least Andy Dalton can throw the ball and force feed it to Allen Robinson. Now look, maybe things will get better for Justin Fields. It was his first start ever, but he had a whole week to prepare. You can't be encouraged by what you saw. And sure, the Cleveland defense is great, but they're not the 85 Bears. They're not some defense that you can't move the ball on. So you got to definitely be worried about Allen Robinson for however long Andy Dalton is out. Now, it doesn't seem like a serious knee injury for Dalton, but it does seem like it'll sideline him at least another week, if not 2 more weeks. Man, I hate to say it, but I think you might have to bench Allen Robinson for those games when Justin Fields starts, unless we see something different from Justin Fields next week. So I would say panic level very high here for Allen Robinson. Definitely panic level is up there because it wasn't like he was putting up monster games with Andy Dalton either. So panic level definitely up there, but this guy is so good. Just got to hope that either A, Justin Fields can turn it around and be the prospect a lot of people thought he would be, or B, Andy Dalton comes back and starts force feeding Allen Robinson again. But as of right now, panic level certainly high. And like I said, I think he's probably benchable for however many games Justin Fields starts, unless we see something from Justin Fields to make us think, okay, that was just rookie jitter, first game jitters, and he can be better. All right, let's stick with that Chicago Bears offense, and we got to talk about David Montgomery, right? We had a great week 1, and everybody thought, yes, I got the David Montgomery who finished the 2020 season, top 5 running back. I'm going to win all my leagues. Week 2, definitely got the touches in week 2, so that was encouraging. Didn't really do a lot with it, but now, week 3, this offense, nobody's immune from this terrible offense right now. 2 catches, 10 carries, hardly any yards. Didn't even get to sniff a goal line carry because the Bears could barely move the football. And kind of like what I said about Allen Robinson, this is a big concern for David Montgomery for however long Justin Fields is a quarterback. Because an offense only getting 100 yards, 150 yards cannot support fantasy relevant players. So I know, see, the thing with Robinson is you could probably bench Allen Robinson. You probably have some other decent wide receiver options. It's tough to bench David Montgomery because it's not like running backs grow on trees, right? It's not like everybody has 3 or 4 good running backs on their bench. So I think you just kind of have to ride it out. Again, we saw good signs with Andy Dalton for David Montgomery. It doesn't seem like the Justin Fields starting timeline is going to be for very long, especially if he's playing this bad. They will 100% go back to Andy Dalton. So, panic level a little bit high here, not too high, because I do think when Andy Dalton comes back, it will get better for David Montgomery and this entire offense. I'm definitely less worried about David Montgomery than I am about Allen Robinson, but still, there's reason for panic here, right? If Andy Dalton's injury ends up being long-term, or if the Bears decide, heck, we'll just roll with Justin Fields the rest of the season, that will not be good. But I do think when Andy Dalton gets back, it will be better for David Montgomery as well. All right, let's talk about another guy on here for the second time, and that is Kyle Pitts, rookie tight end for the Atlanta Falcons. Only had 3 targets on 36 Matt Ryan passes in week 3. That is not good. Had a very poor week 1, kind of rebounded a little bit week 2, had a decent game, showed some signs, and now in week 3, against really a terrible Giants secondary, just not involved at all. I'm not going to say the panic level should be high here because honestly, people's expectations on Kyle Pitts were already way too high. First year tight end struggle. I know everybody said he's going to be a wide receiver. Well, what's going on with that? I don't see it. I see Zacchaeus catching touchdowns. I see Calvin Ridley catching tons of passes. And that was with Russell Gage out this week, right? So if there was ever going to be a time where he was going to be a wide receiver, this would have been the week. So I don't know what you can do, though, if you have Kyle Pitts. It's not like there's a lot of options on the waiver wire. Trust me, in a couple leagues where I don't have a good tight end, I know the struggle of having to stream tight ends. It's not fun and it's not pretty. But at the same time, you can't really trade him right now because you're not going to get fair value for Kyle Pitts. People see what's going on. They see he's struggling. They see that you're probably panicking. They're going to give you some kind of lowball offer. Now, of course, as I always say, if you get a great offer for Kyle Pitts, absolutely take it right now. But otherwise, I think you're just going to have to ride this out. There's going to be good weeks and there's going to be really bad weeks. He's just going to be a very up and down player this year. He's a rookie tight end. That's how it goes with rookie tight ends. So you just got to keep riding it out. Some weeks will be good. Some weeks won't. Just got to ride it out and hope, on the weeks when he's not good, the rest of your lineup goes off and can pull your team to victory. And then finally, let's talk about a quarterback. Not Justin Fields, already talked about him enough. Ben Rothlisberger, wow. He looks done. He looks absolutely done. Even I have to admit it. I was clinging to hope, but even I have to admit he looks done. Now, this is bad news for Chase Claypool, and credit to Pierre. He's been saying that all offseason. He said, don't draft Chase Claypool. Big Ben is done. Looks like he was right. The reason this is bad for Chase Claypool he runs the deeper routes. Now you're gonna turn around and you're gonna say, hey, he had a huge fantasy game in week 3. Well, yes, Deontay Johnson was out and Juju got hurt, so he had to run the shorter routes. When Deontay returns and when Juju returns, Claypool will be going back to his outside role. That will be bad for him. I still think it'll be okay for Deontay and Juju and Najee Harris, but we got to understand that with Ben Rothlisberger under center, this just isn't going to be the fantasy goldmine we used to associate with the Steelers offense. I mean, he'll still have to throw it a ton. He'll still target, Deontay and Juju and even Najee out of the backfield a ton, and they'll get their PPR points, but they're not going to have those monster, 2-touchdown type games that we're used to from the Steelers offense, because I just don't think Big Ben can support it. And if for some reason you were rolling out Big Ben as a, your every week QB, or maybe in a super flex 2 QB league as your second QB, no more. Panic level sky high here. This guy looks like, this is his last year at best. I wouldn't even be surprised if at some point they turn to Mason Rudolph this year. That's how bad Big Ben looks. So definitely for Big Ben, panic level very high. Chase Claypool, panic level pretty high, especially when Deontay and Juju get back. Deontay, Juju, Najee, they should all be fine because they run those shorter intermediate routes. And we know Deontay's going to get peppered with targets. Najee got 13 catches in week 3. Obviously, Juju and Deontay being out helped that as well. So panic level sky high on Big Ben. Probably doesn't need to be rostered or even started in any leagues, even 2 QB or super flex. Well, there you go, guys. Those are my top 5 panic players after week 3. I want to hear from you now. Comment below. Who are some players on your fantasy team that you're panicking about? And I'll let you know what to do with them and if you should be panicking. And don't forget to check out those links in the description. We've got the link to the Discord, totally free. You want to get in there. And also, you want to check out our Patreon. You want to be part of this movement. Help us grow this movement to create the greatest, most awesome, most inclusive, most welcoming fantasy football community in the world. Check out those links in the description. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.